Hey, you guys, I'm inspired today to do a part 3 to the love story of my husband and myself. Mainly because I happen to be flipping through this coloring book. I was supposed to give this to my niece, I believe, for Christmas, but I think I had 2 of these and I decided to hold off and give her this one at a different time as well. Sophia, the first coloring book. And look what I found. It almost reminded me how I felt the night of our first date with my husband. If you recall, our first date was a military ball in San Diego, California. And never had I been to a military event. It was like the best Cinderella moment ever, I'm telling you. It wasn't until I got there, going through the evening, and my husband in his dressed uniforms taking me down I forget what you call it, like the introduction line. At the time, he was a major, or he had just become lieutenant colonel. So he was taking me down the reception line at the beginning of the ball, introducing me to all the big people and the generals, and oh my goodness, and he had such a big happy smile on his face. And as all this was happening and the whole place was looking at us, and I later realized that the reason why all these people were looking at him, there were hundreds of people there. I didn't know everybody really knew each other, and they knew my husband, that when he went to a military event, he never went with anybody. He was always alone. So for him to show up with me, and for him to be just parading me around, introducing me to every single person he knew, they knew something was up. So when I saw this picture in the coloring book, I had to take it out, and I thought, we'll do part 3 of the love story. And so I will do my best to try to find part 1 and part 2, and I will put the link to part 1 and part 2 in the description box below. So part 3 was, if you recall, and the part 2 was my husband asked me to come live with him, and I said, no, I'm living with anybody until I get married. He said, okay, well then marry me. And I said, okay. And this was after our second date. He fell in love with me on our second date. And then like around 2 weeks after our second date was when we were engaged. My parents disowned me. They were not happy. But that has all been settled after our kids were born. They slowly came around. So that was good. And so we were just excited when I realized parents disowned me, and one of my grandmas disowned me. It was like a huge, oh my goodness, would have been made, back in the day, it would have made the best TV scandal. If they had YouTube back then, I would have got billions of views, but anyways. And so when all this started, we were kind of like planning a wedding, and I said, you know what? Let's just go to Vegas and elope. This is just terrible. If everybody's going to side up with my mom and dad. Who's going to come to our wedding? And he said, oh, it's not that bad. I said, not everybody is siding up with your mom and dad. And I said, yeah, Sayora, let's just go to Vegas and elope. And he had met Loretta. This is kind of funny. It'll be us, take Loretta, because my brothers and sisters, my parents aren't going to let my brothers and sisters go. It's going to be a whole big thing. And Loretta, you take your guy for your best man. And I'll bring Loretta and we'll have a good time. And he seriously sat me down and said, for me to rethink it, he said, remember, this is your wedding day. And the whole rest of your life, you want to look upon your wedding day as your special day. Wasn't that wonderful? And again, there was an age difference. I was 21. He was 42. Or I was just going to turn 21, and he had just turned 42, something like that. I'm so very grateful for that, because as it ended up, we did have a wedding. We had a fun wedding and a fun band. This was back in the day when bands would play at weddings. We had the best band. We had a lovely home, horse property, and a lovely swimming pool on acreage. So we had in the backyard, and the band was positioned around the pool, and we were all dancing and eating, having a good time around the pool. So I always tell our kids about that, how grateful I am, because here we are all these years later, and we're going to be married 37 years this summer, 2019. So here I am all these years later, looking back at a lovely wedding memory. Would it have been as lovely if it was shaded by sloppy seconds of running off to Vegas, which we both love. I probably love Vegas more so than he. He fell in love with Vegas more so after we had kids and got married. We were there every year, like once or twice a year, but so I'd be looking back at my wedding, and it would be overshadowed by, we ended up going there because my parents were mad. Everybody was mad. So we just have a beautiful wedding book. We have just everything's nice, and I'm so happy he knew to tell me that. Because, I was just a young whippersnapper. I thought I knew everything. So, we're getting excited about our wedding, and another crazy event outside of my parents disowning me and having a fit was I got in a automobile accident like 2 or 3 days before our wedding. Oh my goodness. And luckily I wasn't hurt. I was very, very sore the next morning, and obviously very shook up the night it happened. And this was back in the day when nobody wore seatbelts. This was 82. This was summer of 82. Now my husband, he would wear seatbelts. He was a military person, so he was really into safety. But anybody familiar with the back roads from Santa Barbara to Simi Valley, you might recognize a back road from the 101 freeway, Santa Rosa Road, down through windy back roads. Santa Rosa Road gets you into the far west side of Simi Valley. And so I was commuting there for a while from Simi to Santa Barbara. And I got off work like at 4 or 5 in the morning. I'm driving home, and I happened to have like a couple bunk beds. At the time I was driving my hand-me-down Ford Econoline van that I bought from my parents. And there's like this 45-degree angle or a 90-degree turn, like I don't know, it's called 90-degree turn. And it was foggy that night, and I'm winding my way to Simi Valley, and I knew there was this 90-degree turn was coming up, but because of the fog, I misjudged it, and I was still driving like the regular speed when I could barely see a few feet in front of me. Bigger than beans. Here comes a 90-degree turn, and I'm not ready for it, and I smash on the brakes, and I didn't hurry up and turn because I was afraid I'd flip. So I went at an angle, and I crashed right into this huge tree. Again, no seat belts, but my head did hit the ceiling. I'm just so grateful that the glass didn't break. I didn't hurt anybody. Even the bunk beds, it was two twin mattresses and two twin box springs. Didn't go flying front and hit me. I was just real shook up. So here it is, like, I don't know, midnight, and the fog is out. Totally spooky, right? So I go walking, and they had big homes there, fancy houses, and I go walking up, and I'm very familiar with the road. It wasn't I'm familiar with it. To the house, there is this huge mansion house with like this super huge driveway. Walk up it, I'm banging on the door. No one had cell phones back then. Dogs are barking, and they finally wake up. I said, I need some help. I had an accident down on the street, and I need you to call a tow truck, or can I call my husband? Or no, of course it wasn't my husband. I probably said, can I call my fiance? There's no. And they were like really not helping me at all. And I turned around and started crying. I started walking back down this huge driveway, bawling my head off. I can't believe it. I cannot believe it. And all the other homes were down a little side dirt road where it was even more spooky and more foggy. I started crying and crying and crying, and in my van crying, and the police show up. I was so, I didn't even know how mad to be at that family. I think if I was scared, I would have at least said, I'm calling the police. I said, go back down to your vehicle. I'm calling the police. And you can tell them about it. But for them to just say, like, no. I really thought they meant no, and they weren't going to pay any attention to me, and I was just like, so anyways, later the owner comes down, says, everything okay? And I remember just like thinking, you have no clue how terrified you made me. And anyway, so I got word to my fiance. A tow truck came. I got home, and he was really concerned about me, but everything worked out good. And the police were really nice, and they were kind of questioning me, like, where am I going? Why am I out at that hour? And they, because it was so dark, and they were, so let me see your eyes. I said, what? They were trying to see if I was like eating, drinking, or drugs, or whatever. So, but they were very nice once they realized it. It was just a crazy little mishap. So that was like 2 days before my wedding. But like I said, didn't get hurt. I was just very, very, very sore. Where's that blue hat? Did I It's very sore. That was not it. There's the blue. And then the van was crunched right in the front, so I had this crunched up van sitting in the front of our house on my wedding day. And I'm just so grateful. Nothing serious happened. And then, so the following Saturday was our wedding day, and that was fun. Even the night before, as we were decorating and planning and getting all happy and excited for the wedding the next day. It was fun too. Anyway, a reminder, if you enjoyed this video, please push the thumbs up like button. I really appreciate it. And as always, thanks for watching.